episode of NFI Hammer. This episode is different as I will be looking at the Warhammer video games that got me interested into the hobby. For those that have not followed along on my journey, about 5 months ago I've started getting into Warhammer miniature painting, and I'm documenting my experience as a beginner on YouTube so that others can learn from someone who is figuring it out the same as they're figuring it out with no effing idea what they're doing. What I thought I would do this week to celebrate Warhammer Skulls, which is a week-long celebration of Warhammer video game, I thought I would actually share what video games I accidentally stumbled across that was the catalyst and the trigger for me to get interested into the Warhammer 40k universe and setting. If you enjoy the video, please leave a like or subscribe, it really helps me out a lot. My first game that I discovered was one called Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, and it is a mobile free-to-play game, and I was bored on my commute on the way to work one day, and the game had just dropped in September 2022, and it had some good reviews, and it's a turn-based tactical game, and I knew absolutely nothing about the Warhammer universe. The universe though in the game was pretty interesting. There were these space marines that were these blue, tough, armored, powerful units, and these space skeleton aliens, and these Aldaris with battling orcs with weird guns and a funny attitude, and I thought, hey, this is pretty cool, and the game was pretty fun. I do recommend it if you're looking for a mobile game. It was really what kind of got me originally interested in it. 1 month later, there was a game that was free in the Epic Games Store called Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, and as it's a free game on the store, I'm not going to say no. And it also is kind of like a turn-based strategy game, which is kind of like XCOM, which I had played before and I thought it was pretty fun. It also had the same skeleton alien dudes that were in Tacticus, and I thought, hey, this is pretty interesting, like it's all kind of connected. So in that game you are playing as the Adeptus Mechanicus, and they're also super interesting, being like these cyborg humans with augmented abilities, and you can customize what abilities they have, what weapons they're using, and they're also like raiding these Necron tomb worlds and trying to steal technology. I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting, like as a science fiction story, and the game is pretty exciting and interesting. So my eyes had definitely opened up to the existence of Warhammer being this futuristic sci-fi, dark, grim universe. And then a month later, this game called Warhammer Darktide was coming out. And that game was a cooperative kind of PvE type game where you play with some friends or other humans, and you have to, fight back hordes of bloodthirsty foes. And the graphics looked really amazing. And again, it was kind of building on the same universe. And I did play that one. I had the Xbox Pass where you can play free as long as you've got the subscription, and it was fun, but it definitely was lacking something for me. I wasn't able to convince my friends to play with me on this one, so I think the solo experience maybe wasn't as exciting, and some of the missions got a little bit repetitive. But it's very good graphics and very immersive into the Imperium versus the Chaos. Definitely piqued my interest. So after playing that for a little bit, in December I had to do a lot of driving, and I started listening to a podcast, which I know is technically, it's not a video game, but it's a podcast called Lorehammer, and it started in 2017, and it goes through everything starting from like the war in heaven, explains what the warp is, the orcs, the elder, humanity pre-Imperium, the Great Crusade, the Horus Heresy. Really takes you through each of the major milestones and helps kind of establish the Warhammer setting for someone like me that had no idea what to do. You know, sometimes in the podcast it does get a little bit cringe and a little bit, you know, edgelordy, but it's definitely a good listen for someone that's trying to just get involved and get started into it. At Christmas, I got my first Warhammer miniature and I started doing YouTube videos documenting that. And one of the comments somebody left on my videos was to tell me that I should try the Total War Warhammer 3 if I, you know, was interested into the Warhammer universe. So luckily for me, there was a free weekend and I gave it a try. I really liked it. It was a turn-based strategy game where you build up your faction's army and bases and then be able to actually attack other factions' armies, and then when you're in this attack mode you can actually control each of the individual units, and there's strategy around like placement and using abilities. Pretty awesome. But this was like the first game that needs a very big time commitment to play. Like the other games you can play for like 10-15 minutes. The mobile games, obviously, you know, even 5 minutes on the train you can play a game or two. But this one you need to give several hours into it to kind of get anywhere. So there is that time commitment expectation when you play it. But it's definitely something I want to get back to. I just haven't had the time recently. And then finally, just recently, I found this Warhammer Combat Cards game on the iPhone. And so I was playing a lot of Marvel Snap, but I was kind of getting a bit frustrated with it. And so I just discovered this, and it's actually the digital version of physical cards that was released in 1989. And each card has like a featured miniature from Warhammer, and they've all, you know, been painted in the style of the time. There's hundreds and hundreds of different cards. And it was really interesting for me because as I was painting, it was interesting to see the different factions and the different ways of painting it in different color schemes. But it also, the game itself is quite fun and it's not very stressful and a good way to kill some time. So they were like the 5 games that got me into the hobby, exposed me to the concept of Warhammer 40k. I'm not saying that these are the best games to play. This was just my experience and sort of my funnel into the universe. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if this is the sort of content that you're interested in more, I can do more. Otherwise, I'll just stick to my painting videos. Anyway, thanks for listening. See you next time.